Yeah, so I'm Addie Hosier, and I represent the OSHA Training Center that services Region 9. And we're out of the Bay Area in California, and we support California, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii. And just yesterday, I had two people from American Samoa in a class that I taught. So that was kind of awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have that reach out to the Pacific Islands. And then what I like to do is talk to different outreach trainers who are out doing cool things in their community. And so today I'm really happy to be talking to Michael de la Pena. And first off, where are you physically? Where I know we're on Zoom, we're in cyberspace, but where are you?
I'm located in Roseville, California.
Oh, okay. And for people not from the area, what's the big city near there?
Yeah, the big city that would be claiming is Sacramento.
And then how did you get into safety? Like, give me a little sense of your background.
Yeah, let's see. So I've been in the solar industry for about 13 years.
Oh,
And in the early part of that, my experience in solar was what actually got me into teaching at two local community colleges. And so I taught solar in those programs. And then in one of the colleges, to kind of complete the whole package for the introduction to the solar industry and construction in general, was to have the instructors know how to teach OSHA. So that's where I got my OSHA 10 or OSHA outreach certification. You know, when I first started teaching, it was mainly to support the solar industry, you know, the students coming into the colleges. And then it just I ended up, you know, joining Grid Alternatives and was able to start reaching a wide demographic. So now a lot of my OSHA outreach training goes to disadvantaged communities, tribal. I do a lot of reentry populations. So you know, I think that's one of the greatest things about the training that I received from your organization is that it allowed me to actually really connect to a broader group. And so definitely has expanded my reach, and even to the point where, you know, I as part of my role as a construction training manager, I also you know, get to do some training development over in other countries. So yeah, I even helped with a program in Nicaragua where, you know, the safety culture is a little bit different, obviously, than what we have in the U.S. But what was interesting about what I know about OSHA outreach is I was able to kind of overlay what we know is vital in the solar business over here in the U.S. We can try, you know, kind of overlay that what would be vital and critical solar deploying it in the solar industry in Nicaragua. So that's kind of how I've been applying what I've learned with OSHA and being able to pinpoint the things that are applicable in various regions, that's kind of how I do it now, and that's mostly like my latest projects.
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually went to Nicaragua?
So that brings up the other element of what I've been doing with OSHA is I've been doing both in person and virtual. So in our case here with the Nicaragua setup, this was all done virtually. So what I had to be able to do was design the safety program, help design the safety program around what is applicable to that region, because some things they just don't do or worry about over there.
Right.
So I'm able to kind of help structure the what would be similar to OSHA 10 training over there, but for their region. For example, with fall protection over there is not as strict, right? So it was a challenge to kind of incorporate that into the programs. But here's the beauty of it. When we introduced those elements that we have here in the US, we now have solar companies down there asking the program that we developed for training on safety. So it's to me, it's groundbreaking, because now we're taking a region that hasn't, you know, really that strict of a safety culture down there, But now they have employers that are highly interested in getting that training, so they're getting
Wow.
OSHA type style training.
So you guys are like the pioneers.
I tell the folks down there in that region that's what they are, just to keep them excited about that, because I think, you know, safety in general while it's common here, you know, and we have our rooms and opportunity to kind of, you know, keep that culture growing
Right.
here. But where it doesn't exist at all is just, yeah, it's a big accomplishment.
So you mentioned before we actually started recording something about Washington, D.C. So that to me is a big reach too, that you're doing things in other parts of the United States. Can you tell
Yes.
me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So DC is one example, and over there we have a focus on disadvantaged communities. You know, there's several wards out there that we work with.
Mhm.
We bring in students from those wards, and we give them the full package. So that means providing the OSHA 10 virtually. And in my cases, that's what I've done. You know, I've done the same thing from the reentry population side of things when working with folks in Chicago. So I've done that there as well. I have done Chicago in person prior to the pandemic, so the organizations out there are familiar with me, and so I was able to provide that training, you know, virtually.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and so that, you know, that virtual aspect has allowed us to be able to do all the other communities as well as, and I mentioned the tribal communities is a big group that
That's amazing. So
is
by
getting it.
tribal, you mean like indigenous people, Native Americans.
Yes,
Oh my gosh. And
yes,
reentry, you're probably talking about people coming out of the justice system, things like that.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Wow.
And you know, some of the places like in Chicago, you know, we're dealing with folks that are in the halfway houses, and
Right.
so right before they're ready to go into the population, they get this nice training, not only just solar but the OSHA as well. The OSHA training gives them a leg to go in any direction within the industry, and
Yeah.
that's key, and that's the
Yeah.
reminder, because some students come into the program with, you know, one particular job in mind, and they sometimes only tune into those elements in the training. But I always remind them that, hey, this is a broad way
Right.
to go. And I also remind them that, you know, I've had students that have gone on. Now, I haven't, as not as a result of my OSHA training, but in my college years, you know, I've had students that have gone off to become safety managers for different
Right.
organizations. So that's also part of the message that I give to some of the students in my OSHA training is that, hey, you know, maybe you can become a safety manager, or you can,
Right.
you know, pick a lane, you know, have fun with it.
That's so great. That's so
Mhm.
great because there are so many opportunities. That's
Yes.
wonderful.
So if I were to say there's a challenge, it's uh, you know, being able to decide whether you are ready to break away from your existing industry. If you are
Right.
teaching for an industry, like for me, I'm teaching for solar, right? And if you do start teaching the folks that are not going to go in solar, you just need to be prepared to be able to give case examples that you
Right.
can actually genuinely speak to, and not
Yeah.
a story that I heard this. Because students love it when, like, I tell them all the time my electrical scares, right?
Right.
Because I was in the solar industry, so I show them, you know, where I almost died, and you know, or like when being on a roof, you know, I wasn't always safe. And that's the thing about teaching OSHA, is you got to be able to show the students that, you know what, I can become safe minded, right? Because there was a time where I was on a roof and I didn't care about a harness, right?
Heck no.
But since
Yeah.
then, I've completely adjusted, because I've adopted the mindset of, you know, safety. And so I think that's the challenge, being able to make sure you can connect to what you teach,
Right. Right.
right? and also be prepared to speak to those that are not in the industry. So I think
Right.
that's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's very good points. How have we helped you? How have we helped you with your safety career?
Well, always keep me up to date.
Yeah.
Making the process, you and your team have always made the process of submitting the rosters and getting the
Right.
cards back. The one thing I can always count on from Susanna is always timely. Like I
Right.
knew it would come back right away. So that's been helpful with me fulfilling my commitment to the students.
Right.
You know, I don't want to be the one to say, well, I'm waiting on so and so. But
Exactly.
I never had to say that. I never had to say that.
That's great.
As soon as I submitted, I got the cards back, and you know, I processed the cards, but it was always very fast.
Is there anything you wanted to add before we close, before we wrap it up?
No, I just appreciate all the support that I do get from you, and I don't foresee myself getting training from anybody else but you and your team.
Yay.
Yeah, there's no need to go outside of this house. This has
Aw,
been a great
that's great.
experience.
Oh, good, Michael. I appreciate that so much.